2. Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It was warm and sultry and sunny and sandy and beachy in Miami. And now we're back in Baltimore, and it's 1-0 and a huge victory for the Ravens over the Miami Dolphins. And Luke Jones joins us now. We'll talk so much about Lamar and the offense and Jimmy Smith's injury. But then there's the part where the defense had to go out there and play 3 and out and take the ball away. And I know there's no Laramie Tunsil and Ryan Fitzpatrick's 100 years old. But as I pointed out, and I did point this out on Twitter in the middle of the game, when it's 28-0 or 35-3, and there's still 40 minutes of football left, someone has to go out there and get off the field. You don't want more injuries than what you already had with Jimmy Smith. And I think from a clean defensive standpoint, Wink Martindale's probably going to like most of what he sees on tape, including the fact that Ryan Fitzpatrick was out there, and he could have paid him more to be a scout team quarterback to say, hey, we've been playing this preseason August stuff for the last 6 weeks. Go out and really try to beat us today. Go after us today. And that's what Ryan Fitzpatrick was doing, 3, 4, 5 touchdowns down on Sunday. And you know, right up till halftime, the ball went over their head one time. I mean, there is some tape there on defense. It wasn't just a throwaway or a preseason game from that perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, I think it's tough to look at this game and be wildly impressed with the defense, and not to say they played poorly by any means. I mean, they played well. I mean, they gave up 10 points. I'm not, but I think that was the expected part of this. Even if you're questioning the pass rush like I am, and I still am, I didn't see anything on Sunday that has alleviated my concern about the pass rush moving forward. I think they got pressure on Miami, but look at that offensive line. If you can't get pressure against that group, then boy, all bets are off when you start playing some legitimate contenders. But they did what they were supposed to do for the most part. I mean, I think there were certainly some good things to take away from that. I mean, Matt Judon blowing up plays. We saw Patrick Owasso make some big plays. I think he's the kind of guy that's fun from the standpoint of, I don't know if he's going to be as steady as C.J. Mosley, because I think he's the kind of guy that'll just have kind of the peaks and valleys a little bit more, but he'll make some big plays. He'll splash. And he might do some things where he's out of position or things like that, but he'll make some plays that make you, kind of get out of your chair a little bit at that position. So, I thought from that standpoint, from the standpoint of playing with a lead, knowing you were going to go up against a quarterback that a little more representative than what they saw in the preseason, knowing that they were going to push the ball down the field. And let's face it, the Dolphins, they left some plays on the field offensively as well. I mean, there were a couple instances where there were some open receivers and Fitzpatrick either missed or a guy didn't come down with the pass that he should have. I mean, I credit Tony Jefferson for the hit in the end zone, but that's a ball that an NFL wide receiver needs to hold on to. If that was a Ravens receiver, you'd be saying, that was a drop. You got to catch that ball. So there were a few plays like that I think there was just enough that Wink Martindale will have their attention, so to speak. But, again, you look at a 10-point output as far as what you allowed, you'll take that any day of the week. And, my predicted score for Sunday's game was 30-10. So at least I hit on the 10 part. So it's about what I expected from this defense. I'm not sure we really found out or learned anything drastically from that side of the ball on Sunday, but was good to see them do what they should do, especially being staked to a big lead, and then they continued to play aggressively and didn't give up too many big plays, anything like that. The 2-minute drill at the end of the first half, that's something you can point to and say, hey, got to clean that up a little bit, but overall, not a whole lot to complain about. And I still think plenty of unknown about this defense once the competition ramps up a little more. But I think certainly an effort where you give it a thumbs up, and it's moving on to the next week now.
All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at Roofing by Elite, Maryland's most trusted roofer since 1999. Brian joins us every couple weeks. We talk some Ravens football. He is a local guy from the area around here. RoofingByElite.com is committed to providing customers with the finest roofing services and installs available. Yes, I'm reading from this because the website's not in front of me, but you can go to Roofing by Elite and get in front of you. and give Brian a call. Jennings Cafe is going to be hosting us this week at Sarah Heminger for Thread and our Baltimore Positive broadcast. That's on Thursday. Friday, we're back in Catonsville at State Fair with Ben Jealous. Next week, we're at Fadley's, and we're going to have Brandon Scott, City Council President, as well. I'm doing the Building Equity and Housing Affordability Conference on Tuesday down at the Meeting House in Columbia with Damien O'Doherty around here. All of our Baltimore Positive stuff up. Dick Cass, Ron Shapiro, Reverend Al Hathaway, Don Moeller with me, as well as his blog at WNST.net. We're putting all that Baltimore Positive stuff to work now in our morning newspaper as well. Royal Farms, the waffle sandwich is available at Royal Farms. All the locations around here, I use them to pump all. It's my exclusive gas home. It's my exclusive Western Fry home as well. Eat plenty of fried chicken as well when I'm doing concerts in the summer season. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. Luke, for the Lamar Jackson show and what we saw there and whatever criticisms there are and him driving too fast on a freeway on Instagram in Florida and can he throw the ball, there is a part of him that when all this is over with, that he has to sort of get the jab in about the running back thing, right? Like, there is no doubt that he realizes every team in the league passed on him, that no one wanted him to be a quarterback, that he sat with all of these teams and some teams that he refused to sit with a year and a half ago, and that Josh Rosen jogs in, right? The guy that was one of the 4 or 5 guys ahead of him in school, all during the draft period, and he's out there and, in jogs Josh Rosen losing 52-10 or whatever it was at the time, right? It's a fascinating, I think, head study of what a quarterback is and where he is when he doesn't say, I told you I was going to do it. He said, you called me a running back, right? Like, literally, that eats at him, and it fires at him in probably a good way if you're a Ravens fan, because he plays a little angry in a lot of ways, doesn't he?
Sure, and that's what you want. You want that competitive fire. I mean, especially at that position where all eyes are on you, all expectations are you. It's the one position that we attach a win-loss record to on the football field. I mean, as much as win-loss record for a quarterback is, I don't want to say it's like win-loss record for a pitcher.
Which we all know is meaningless.
But it doesn't really give you a great picture of what a player is. I'm not saying it's meaningless, but there are other measures that need to be alluded to and that need to be mentioned, that need to be considered when you're talking about the overall quality of a quarterback. But you're in the crucible. I mean, everything you do is under the microscope, good or bad. Now, I think Sunday's performance, whether that means Lamar Jackson suddenly is an MVP candidate or whether that was just the greatest game of his career statistically speaking, I think Sunday should end any of the talk about, which was always nonsense anyway, that, this guy should play another position in the NFL. Just stop. You sound dumb when you say that, because it's clear that the guy at least has the ability to be somewhere in the range of the 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Whether you're really high on him and you think he's can be a top 10 quarterback, or whether you're skeptical and you still want to see the consistency, want to see accuracy week to week, and there's still questions. There's still fair questions about Lamar Jackson, but I think he was responding to the over-the-top nonsense where someone saying that this guy's not an NFL quarterback, this guy should be a running back, this guy should be a wide receiver, which I think that was a pretty impressive statement in that regard. And look, his play last year was a statement that really should have put a lot of that to bed. I mean, again, you can ask how good he's going to be. You can be skeptical whether top 10, top 15, top 20, whether he can consistently lead his teams to victory from the pocket. All those are fine questions to ask, just like you're asking the same type of questions about Baker Mayfield, or you mentioned Josh Rosen coming into Sunday's game. I mean, we always have questions about young quarterbacks, but it was just what he perceived to be disrespect, what a lot of people to even perceive to be some of it racially motivated even. But I think he is showing that you can you can pick it apart and you can question it and you can say he needs to get better at this, or he's not particularly good at this, or he's really, really good at this. But this notion.
Yeah, Josh Rosen's not very good at much at this point, right?
Yeah,
right. He's not on the field.
But this notion that he's, say, I don't know, I'm just throwing out a random college option quarterback, Tommy Frazier from the 90s with Nebraska. This notion that's all he is, that was always silly, because even last year, if you were willing to look at it, there were good things that he did as a passer. It's just a matter of needing to get better, and he understood that. Lamar Jackson was, throughout the spring and summer, as if anyone wants to say, "Oh, he's gotten really cocky," to say not bad for a running back, throughout the spring and summer, almost to the point where he's self-deprecating. He said he wasn't very good last year as a passer. He said that his accuracy stunk. He said that he had to work on having a wider base and to be.
Oh, he is critical of himself. Yeah. He doesn't think he's perfect. There's no doubt about it. Right. But he thinks he can be better, and he's pretty. He has plenty of confidence.
Right. I think his comments and the people that really take exception with criticism is the criticism that speaks about him in an absolute fashion, like he's supposed to be a finished product after 8 career regular season starts in the NFL. Like he's a finished product after his first playoff game, which was a woeful performance. It was terrible. There's no disputing that. But it was his first playoff game, and we talked about this last January.
Every rookie stinks.
Go look at Joe Flacco, who ended up having maybe the best postseason performance a quarterback ever had in 2012. Go look at what he did in his first couple playoff games, his first couple years in the postseason. It wasn't anything to write home about. It was a couple of those games, it was downright ugly. So let's just remember, guys get better. Guys aren't a finished product as a rookie. Guys don't come in and they're the same as they're going to be in year 2 or year 4 or year 5. I mean, let's just pump the brakes on trying to act like Lamar Jackson was this finished product. Again, I still have questions. I'm not crowning him the best quarterback in football after what he did on Sunday. I mean, it was incredible to watch. But, yeah, it was against a bad Dolphins team. So, what it does tell me is, for anyone who's wanted to speak about his upside, there you go. I mean, for anyone that was so critical of him missing wide open receivers last year and having such woeful stats through the first 3 quarters of the Chargers playoff game, well, there you go. I mean, that guy that you said can't complete a pass, well, even if it was a bad defense, he completed passes. And guess what? He even completed some passes where the coverage wasn't, it's not as though guys were running free 5-6 yards on every single play. He made some window throws, and he did some things that should at least make people say, hey, there's some real growth there. In the same way that I was saying throughout the summer that I know it's training camp, I know it's practice, I know it's not the same thing as the regular season, but he looks more comfortable. He's been more consistent as a passer. His footwork and mechanics have been cleaned up. The spiral, I don't know if he'll ever spin the ball like Joe Flacco or some big arm quarterback of that nature.
But I would think inside of 18 yards, the thing he's got going on with Andrews, and then the ability to throw the ball over the heads of it. Yeah. The ability to go up top the Hollywood and rip the top off the defense.
And hit him in stride the way he did, right. I mean, that's there.
And that has to be practiced, and and he has to be upright, and he has to be not running into linebackers 14 times a Sunday, which they managed to do, win impressively, and I don't know that he got grass on his jersey on Sunday, literally, right? Like, that's what, when you walk off the field and feel like Tom Brady does on Monday morning because you don't get beaten up, then you can have a 15-year career. Running into linebackers 214 times, that's not sustainable. So Sunday, very sustainable. What we saw last year, to me, you and anybody else with sense, not sustainable.
Yeah, and look, he's still going to run. I mean, that's still going to be a big part of his game. I don't think anyone is
didn't have to when you're winning 59-10.
Sure, but can you win football games if he's not running 17 times? And that was a big question in the offseason. Well, he did that Sunday, and it's Miami, I know, and anyone who's skeptical is saying, oh, my gosh, you're going on and on about what might be the worst team in the NFL that they played on Sunday. I get that. But there were still people doubting if he could even do that against a bad team. And, well, He did, and he had a perfect passer rating, and he threw 5 touchdowns, which had only been done 2 other times in the history of this franchise. So let's not move the goalposts here. Let's acknowledge what he did. Let's acknowledge that he clearly displayed some growth, and while also admitting that, hey, level competition wasn't the greatest. It's one game, but that looked like some real progress that was made on the heels of a preseason and a training camp in which he looked like he was making progress. So let's give him his due, not with the caveat of, oh, he looks really good for a guy who couldn't pass the ball last year. He looks really good, period, on Sunday. End of discussion. Not for Lamar Jackson, not for a running quarterback, not for
a second-year quarterback. Right?
He looked good. Yeah. He looked like a great quarterback, period, on Sunday. So let's see what happens in Week 2, and let's see what happens in Week 3. And at the very least now, all of the doubt and all the hand-wringing and all the concerns and all the criticism that he took for how he played in the playoff game, well, he certainly responded to that by looking like the polar opposite, and it's not going to be this way every week. He's not going to complete 85% of his passes. He's not going to average 15 yards per attempt. He's not going to have a perfect passer rating or throw for 5 touchdowns, but there was an example of a game in which he played from the pocket, and he played really well from the pocket, and the Ravens won a game in convincing fashion in which Lamar Jackson ran the ball 3 times for 6 yards. There were a lot of people, and a lot of his biggest critics would not have even given him that much credit. So give him credit, and now it's on to the next game and the next challenge, which I suspect, even against the Arizona Cardinals, who I don't expect to be very good in 2019, still going to be a bigger challenge than what the Miami Dolphins showed on Sunday.
Luke Jones can be found, Baltimore Luke and Luke at WNST.net. He's calling in on the Lee Tessier team hotline. Lee Tessier has stepped up in sponsorship of what we do around here. If you're selling your home, buying a home in the market, you need the Lee Tessier team. No risk to you. He lets you get out of the contract anytime you want. You want Lee to be your realtor, just give him a call, 410-638-9555. Came into my life when my wife was battling leukemia. Still here 5 years later and sponsoring our Lee Tessier team hotline. So tell Lee that we said hello. We're going to be getting out and doing some shows at Adams Jeep on the 30th. Nick Boyle will be joining us up in Aberdeen. Come on out. That's all brought to you by our friends at Fremont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need the right lender. Put you together with Carl Delmont. Make that happen. He's going to be joining us later on in the week around here as well. Also, a reminder that Hammer and Nails is there. You need a haircut, manicure, pedicure, the man cave for all of your needs in the Owings Mills Town Center. I'm not wearing the shirt today, but I'll be wearing it later on in the week, and I might even take my Curio hat off if I might get my haircut done up right. Patrick's in Essex, my old stomping grounds. They do steak night on Thursday night. They got the bands coming in now. I'll be looking forward to it, getting back over there. Taco nights on Monday, shrimp on Tuesday, and wings on Wednesday. Patrick's in Essex. I think it's Pat Rick's. We have to pronounce it with the Essex accent. Luke Jones is here. Luke, I sat about 8 feet away from Eric DeCosta in the press box, and Eric's not the one to get cocky or to even break a smile when it's 59-10. It really felt more like, Blues Brothers, all business with him and Ozzy and Joe Ortiz and the brain trust. That's always the same brain trust getting in these elevators. I mean, I've ridden these elevators with them when they've won Super Bowls and when they've lost playoff games, right? Like when they've won in Pittsburgh and when they've lost in Pittsburgh. So, I'm privy to all this, and there is an evenness about all of it, but it was Eric DeCosta's first game as the general manager, and they did win 59-10 with a quarterback that he recommended and traded up for. And there is a whole strategy about, how all of this happens. But the fact that they drafted him in the first round, they get the extra year, they gave away the draft pick in Ozzy's last draft, and that a year and a half later, we will measure all of these quarterbacks, right? All the Josh Allens and all the Josh Rosens, all these guys get measured. And here's Lamar Jackson doing what 31 other teams said couldn't be done a year and a half ago.
Sure, and let's take it beyond that, because for two people like us who have been bigger Joe Flacco guys than, frankly, a lot of other media types, what was one thing that we talked about quite a bit? Their inability or their unwillingness, whatever you want to characterize it as, to put sufficient offensive skill players around the quarterback, even when they had draft picks, even when there was cap space to do it. They didn't do it. It's not, for me, it's not just that they drafted Lamar Jackson. And look, I'm not going to hide from the fact that philosophically I was against them drafting a quarterback. And it wasn't against drafting Lamar Jackson. It was, you haven't done anything to put any talent around your current quarterback, so you're just starting over. I mean, it doesn't really make sense. But from the standpoint of they committed to drafting Lamar Jackson, and look at what they put around him from a standpoint of they drafted Mark Andrews in the third round last year. We'll see about Hayden Hurst, and he's flashed, but he's not there yet, and there's still questions there as far as whether he's going to live up to a first-round billing. But they drafted 2 tight ends with meaningful draft capital last year with the thought that, hey, these are 2 guys that we're hoping are going to be really important parts of our young quarterback of the future, his development. And this year, they go into the draft, and they draft Marquise Brown in the first round. They draft Miles Boykin in the third round. We'll see what Justice Hill looks like. It wasn't exactly a sterling debut for him, but he showed plenty of promise in the preseason. Look at what they put around Jackson, and that's a credit to Eric DeCosta. And they bring in Mark Ingram, the kind of feature back that, frankly, this organization hasn't had since Ray Rice. I mean, they've had guys that have looked the part for a year or so.
He reminds me of like Ernest Biner at the, you know what I mean? Like sort of the sage dude, right? And Earl Thomas has this quietness about him that's different than the Ray Lewis or the Terrell Suggs kind of leadership. More Cal Ripken-y sort of in his statesmanship and sort of quietness. But Mark Ingram, and from the minute I saw him come into the room when they signed him, I keep saying this, they brought in a grown-up. You know what I mean? Like, and whether that was Trevor Price in the old days or Eric Weddle, who had that just horrific, gruesome-looking thing happen Sunday, to him, when you handpick these guys, it's one thing to go out and pick a 21-year-old kid and sit in a hotel room out in the snow in Indianapolis and try to get to know him and go down to Mobile. But a guy who's got a decade of track record of being a grown-up, and a guy that Sean Payton wanted around, and a guy that Drew Brees sat in huddles and had drinks with and went out and broke down defenses and talked the game with, that even Matt Skura last week talking about, hey, that Mark Ingram, man, he is always giving us good advice and always putting us in a better position. And when you're a 25-year-old center and you realize that, there's things we're not going to know about as journalists, but when you're around smart people and grown-ups in this sport, when let's be honest, what the Raiders, the Steelers, and the Patriots are about to go through with this knucklehead wide receiver, the opposite of that is how you win football games. And Mark Ingram, from a personality standpoint, from a character standpoint, from a dude standpoint, really feels like something that was needed here, and that's not one tip of the cap. That's 100 tips of the cap to Eric DeCosta for identifying that kind of guy.
Yeah, I agree, but he can play, and that still has to be the most important thing at the end of the day. I mean, the Miami Dolphins might have a lot of really nice guys, and
you always said that about Eric Weddle. By the way, can he play, right?
To identify a character guy is one thing. To identify a character guy that can really play, that's when you have something. I mean, that's really.
But your character guy, if you're in Miami, it doesn't even matter because the team stinks. But on a team where it's that missing ingredient, right? That extra thing you have when you have Mark Andrews and you have Hollywood Brown that can run, and you have Marshall Yanda. You have some really nice. You have a 12-year head coach who's won Super Bowl. You have all of that. The thing you might need for a 22-year-old quarterback is a 32-year-old running back in the huddle to say, "We're going to be all right. We're going to be fine here," right?
Yeah, and again, I'm not dismissing that, but he can play. That's really what it keeps coming back to for me. When you have high character guys, but they have to be able to play because it doesn't carry the same weight. I mean, this team's had a lot of character guys over the last 4 to 5 years. I mean, John Harbaugh has talked about the character of his football team, but they haven't won any playoff games. So we can keep banging home that point, but that point, it carries way more clout when it's a guy that's a 2-time Pro Bowl running back, when it's a guy that, even though he's 29 years old, or he'll be 30 years old in December, Mark Ingram is a guy who hasn't had 300 carry seasons where you typically look at him in the same way that you typically look at a 29-year-old, 30-year-old running back and say, well, that guy's probably on his last leg. So, the character part's important. I don't want to be dismissive of it, but these guys can play. And so when you have high-character guys that are among your best football players, then yeah, I mean, that's really what you want. So it was clearly something they identified because of no Joe Flacco, no Terrell Suggs, no Eric Weddle, no C.J. Mosley in that locker room anymore. So there were some voids that needed to be filled, and especially when you go as young as the Ravens have gone on the offensive side of the ball, where going into the season, I believe 14 of their 24 full-time offensive players are in year one or year two, then, yeah, you do value that veteran leadership, but ultimately that veteran leadership, it's only going to really be heard if it's one of your best players on the field, and certainly Mark Ingram was that on Sunday with a 49-yard run on his first play from scrimmage. I mean, you'll take that, and 7.6 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. You'll gladly take that. I know I'll take it because he's on one of my fantasy football teams, so there's that as well. So certainly Lamar Jackson getting the headlines for the Ravens, and rightfully so on the offensive side of the ball, he and Marquise Brown, but don't forget about what Mark Ingram did, and he really set the tone for what was a record-setting day for the Ravens offense, that's for sure.
Luke Jones is here. He's Baltimore Luke, and Luke at WNST.net, in on the Lee Tessier team hotline. I wrote at and I am writing again at WNST.net. Imagine a writer writing. But I'm going to be blogging a couple times a week, and I'm excited to sort of write in short form because I'm so stuck in long form and going back to my newspaper days. But I wrote that all the toys of Eric DeCosta were brought out of the Purple Garage for a spin. And I think that there were a lot of toys and a lot of pieces. And we talk about Ingram and the drafting of Lamar Jackson and where Hollywood Brown is in all of this and where Pernell McPhee you brought back and where Matt Judon's going to be. All these guys are tied to Eric, including Bradley Bozeman, who's out pushing people around and getting in the way, and who's going to play left guard, and where's the deep depth in our secondary and all of that. There were a lot of toys out on the field on Sunday.
Yeah, there were, and I'm glad you brought up Bradley Bozeman because we've kind of mentioned the offensive line here and there, but they did a heck of a job, and there are very fair questions about that group. When you look at that Chargers game, as much as everyone wanted to put the failure of Lamar Jackson on Lamar Jackson, his biggest critics, and talking about he can't throw and going on, a big part of that game was the failure of the interior offensive line and really left guard. Matt Skura didn't have a great game against the Chargers. So a big question was, how are the Ravens going to handle that? And we didn't get an answer throughout the spring and summer. Jermaine Illuminor looked like he was going to be the left guard until the Ravens traded him toward the end of the preseason. But Bradley Bozeman, first opportunity to kind of solidify that left guard spot, he did a nice job. Is he an established starter now? Is he a guy that I'm confident is going to be starting in Week 6? No, because I need to see more, and I need to see more against the better front. But it was good to see him do what he did. He had a couple really nice pull blocks to spring Mark Ingram on a couple occasions, and he played well. So this team, this offense is still going to go as far as its offensive line will take them, as far as Lamar Jackson will take them. So, we saw what we did from Lamar Jackson. That spoke for itself on Sunday, but was good to see the O-line do what it did. And I think that left guard position is still going to be a question for them and will be for the foreseeable future. And still would not be surprised if halfway through the year we even see Ben Powers take over there in the way that we saw Orlando Brown at right tackle last year. But I think for the O-line, that was a really encouraging performance for them right off the bat. And let's remember, they barely even got any reps together. Those 5 on the field at the same time did not play together in the preseason, and wasn't until the last week or two that Bozeman was even the guy consistently taking the first-team reps at left guard. So it's a work in progress, but you'll gladly take what it was able to produce on Sunday. And again, we know it's the Dolphins, but Sunday did show you what this offense is capable of when it all comes together and when they're firing on on all cylinders when they're firing at every level, and it's pretty exciting to be able to do that. They're not going to score 59 next week or the week after that, or
they're not.
They won't score 59 the rest of the year. I'll make that bet right now.
Whoa, okay.
I'm not sure they come close to that the rest of the year. But for anyone that's wondered, what's the upside of this team? What is this offense really capable of doing? You got a glimpse of that. Even if it was against the worst team in NFL history, you'll still take it rather than kind of giving the ball up and committing penalties and making mistakes and winning 20-10, which I don't think anyone would have been shocked if that had been the result Sunday necessarily. So, yeah, you'll gladly take that kind of performance and understand that it's not going to happen every week, but sure is nice to see what this offense is capable of, really in every phase, any level, from the line to running game, wide receiver certainly. Mark Andrews, big game for him, specifically in the second half, and of course your quarterback having an all-world kind of day. You'll gladly take that and move on to week 2 now and say, well, that's not going to happen again to that degree, but it sure is nice to see a team have a record kind of day, doing things that a Ravens offense had never done before.
How about just winning a road game? Winning a road game is a big deal. Winning a conference game. I mean, there's all of that goes into it that, makes anything difficult in this league week to week because they're going to get upset. To your point, we talked about Cincinnati earlier, some of the dregs in the league. You got to play them twice, and you got to win these games. And the teams you're supposed to beat, you're supposed to beat. And so far, so good. And, hey, man, I think for everybody, there's room on the purple bandwagon, right?
No question, and I think there's still plenty of room on the Lamar Jackson bandwagon, although that started filling up big time around 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. Hey, it's fun. I mean, this team was just in such a holding pattern for such a long time with what you were going to get from the offense, what you were going to get from Joe Flacco, what you were going to get from veterans on this team, and let's face it, I mean, they have one playoff win since winning the Super Bowl. So to pivot, to change, to get younger, to move into this offensive revolution, and I'm not sure it's going to be revolutionary, but it's clear that this team's excited about this new direction in which it's headed, and that's fun. That should be something that should be embraced, and that's not to be dismissive of what Terrell Suggs or Joe Flacco or Eric Weddle or C.J. Mosley or Zadarius Smith or any other veteran player who's moved on over the last year or two, but it's a new era, and I think Sunday showed just a glimpse of the potential it could have to be really, really fun, and what more can you want as a fan? I mean, I know I was kind of getting tired of that 8-8, 9-7 kind of territory that they lived for 3 or 4 years, so let's see if this can be better. And I don't know if it will be. I mean, I predicted 9-7 in a wild card spot, and I'm not going to. One dominating win over the Miami Dolphins isn't making me change my tune to say the Ravens are going 14-2 this year. But hey, that was a really exciting glimpse of what this offense could possibly become, and let's see some more of that. That was fun.
Luke can be found, Luke at WNST.net. And, of course, he'll be out in Owings Mills all week long. Any breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That is all brought to you by our friends at Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis will be here on Thursday from 3 until 5, getting you ready on with me as well. I got to tell you about Cole Roofing and Gordian Energy. Bill Cole will be here on Wednesday. He joins me once a week. He'll be a very happy guy because he's a Ravens PSL guy and hosting his parties over in the parking lot as we get going at 1 o'clock against the Arizona Cardinals. So find Bill Cole doing weekly therapy, and Lord knows I need it these days. Cole Roofing and Gordian Energy for solar and learning, which we try to do around here for all of our Baltimore positive stuff. We're around all week. Sarah Heminger joins us from Thread in Catonsville at Jennings. That's on Thursday. On Friday, Ben Jealous will join us at State Fair. Next week, Brandon Scott joins us at Fately's Seafood of Lexington Market. Out on Baltimore Positive this week, you're going to find Ron Shapiro. You're going to find Dick Cass from the Wine Room down at Roost Chris, as well as Reverend Al Hathaway, who joined us at Jennings in just a tremendous conversation. Went to school with George Young and Kurt Schmo. I mean, just incredible sports stories, old school City College stories, but more than that, a real history of Baltimore and the city and the differences between the city and the county and redlining and the history of the city. Just an incredible conversation. Reverend Al Hathaway from Union Baptist. Make sure you check that out at Baltimore Positive as well. Want to give a shout out to Gary Risling and our friends from Silver Spring Mining. They made us lunch a couple weeks ago. Stopped in there. Always great to see Gary Risling. I'm always trying to order the chicken tenders when I'm in there because I like them so much, but I'm trying to stretch out and do other things on the menu. Get a crab cake, get some seafood. Love the salads there. Silver Spring Mining Company, 3 locations, Bel Air, Hunt Valley, and Perry Hall, or I should say Bel Air last, but Gary's out there. And we were hockey training camps are starting. How about that? You like that? Hockey is starting already. I feel like I was just watching Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat. We're going to be up at Adams Jeep with Nick Boyle on the 30th. Make sure you mark that on your calendar. We're doing Raven stuff. It's all brought to you by Fremont Mortgage. I got sponsors everywhere, fun everywhere, Baltimore Positive everywhere. No days off. Winning 59-10. Perfect quarterback ratings. And nothing to say about the Orioles yet, but I will be blogging about that later. But for now, it's all the marvelous around here. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.